Welcome back, Professor. It was interesting. I was discussing with our diplomatic friends from the Finland, the MC of Finland. She raises an interesting question, the same question as you, same issue as you mentioned earlier. Why didn't Jokowi attend the UN General Assembly? Why was it Vice President Yusuf Kala? What was the reasoning behind this? And so, is there how is it divided? How duties of foreign policy or foreign approach divided between Indonesia's #1 and Indonesia's and his deputy? And who decides on this?
Well, there's no clear division. There's no charter being signed by Jokowi and by Yusuf Kala. I attend this and I attend that. The vice president, after all, constitutionally, he helps the president, and it is the president who decides which meetings he will attend to, and which meeting he will ask the vice president to attend, or which meeting should be sufficiently presented by ministerial level. Also, the advice comes from the Prime Minister. From what we have seen so far in the past 2 years, the president prefers to attend smaller forums, more limited forums like ASEAN Summit, and also the bigger one is APEC with only 20 odd memberships, and G20.
You mean a more focused forums?
More focused forums where the issues, the agenda are more concrete and less formal speeches, more retreats type, so that he can really rub shoulders with the decision makers and come with concrete deliverables. He's less enthusiastic about attending a forum with over 100 odd members and
lengthy
discussions dealing with really complex global issues with no immediate solutions. But having said that, people were very surprised when Indonesia decided to celebrate the 60th anniversary of the Asian African Conference in Bandung. After all, in 1955, this was the first major conference held by newly independent countries. So because the Prime Minister thought at the time that since President Joko Widodo is not interested in major, huge celebrations, she actually suggested in the beginning that maybe the celebration should focus on business forums, the Asian Africans business forums. But President Joko Widodo said, no, we will celebrate it in big style, with the full participations of all the member countries and inviting all of the top leaders from, the non-aligned, the Asian African countries. They are comprising the majority of the UN members. Nearly as big as the non-aligned movement countries, which is over 100 countries. So this is again, I see, the twin legacy of the earlier presidents of Sukarno and Suharto. Don't forget that 1955, it was President Sukarno who presided over the Asian African Conference. This is Indonesia is truly proud of that, and Indonesia's role is duly recognized as by all the other emerging countries then, and continues to be recognized. The Asian African Conference was a precursor to the non-aligned movement. So this is a major event for Indonesia, a very important movement for newly independent countries to have a different voice, a separate voice from the global divides between the East and the West. So Indonesia took pride, and President Joko Widodo took leadership in that, and he sat through the meetings and listening to all those speeches as well.
Like you said, 100% participation from Indonesia and his cabinet. So do you think is that where the momentum of change start for Jokowi's
so I think the realization is, don't forget, he came from a mayor of a small town in Solo. Of course, being a mayor, he received several international awards. So he had attended many meetings internationally. So he's not uncomfortable in speaking in international fora, but it's just in a different scale, smaller scale. And then being a governor, also, of course, he also attended various international events. But his focus is very, very focus on certain issues like health, education, infrastructure, and so on and so forth. So initially he said, this is what I'll focus on. But as President of the Republic of Indonesia, of course, he has to assume that mantle. And that means that whether he likes it or not, he has to attend all of those meetings. After all, symbolic attendance is as important as substance. ASEAN countries refuse to forget the non-attendance, for example, of President George W. Bush or Condoleezza Rice for years when they failed to turn up at ASEAN regional forum meetings or the East Asia Summit. So in diplomatic circle, who attends at what level is important.
It's being discussed, within that circle. So would you say that Jokowi is very keen within that shift, very keen to actually be more involved in the foreign policy that has strategic results for Indonesia, economic impacts for Indonesia?
Now, if you look at this, when you discuss again who makes a foreign policy, from what I understand, from where I sit at the Vice President's office, you can see that the President really trusts the Foreign Minister and trusts the professionalism of the Foreign Ministry, and I think that trust is not misplaced. I do believe that the Foreign Ministry is a strong institution. It has the capacity to carry out its obligations, to be the spearhead of Indonesians' foreign relations, and it has a strong basis: the Constitution, the Foreign Policy Act, and on all the various practices as well. So it is able to deliver that, and the Foreign Ministry is in charge of all of the obligations, the bilateral, regional, and multilateral obligations that Indonesia is a member of. But the President Jokowi is in fact taking a more hands-on approach when it comes to economic diplomacy. Many people were a bit surprised, and some raised eyebrows when President Jokowi appointed a number of line ministers to coordinate relations with specific countries, for example, and there were some 14 countries and organizations, like the US, China, Japan,
the major economies,
Russia, so the major economies, but the Foreign Ministry remains as a super minister coordinating foreign affairs, and I think that is a recognition, because the Foreign Minister doesn't really have the ability to follow through on the various
every single policy is made
because on foreign agreements, it's not the Foreign Ministry who will follow through the agreements. It will continue to be the line ministries, but on certain key bilateral relations, the President feels that there should be a go-to person.
We'll talk about this go-to person, which is interesting. You're not the only one. It seems that Dino Patijala, the co-founder of the foreign policy community, also feels the same way. There has to be a go-to person in regards to foreign policy under Jokowi's administration. When we come back.